In recent months, Ukraine has increased the amount of damage it has been inflicting on Russia. Kyiv has been hitting both military and civilian infrastructure, such as warships and oil refineries, respectively. Ukraine has managed to do this by ramping up its drone capabilities, and Russia, in turn, is upgrading its drone defenses to counter the new Ukrainian threat. Here's a report.
Silent death. Death from above. Even the legendary old witch from Slavic folklore, Baba Yaga. These are reportedly some of the nicknames that the Russians have given to Ukraine's new drones. Drones that have begun slowly turning back the tide in the war in Ukraine. Moscow started with a massive advantage in drone warfare when the Ukraine war broke out 4 years ago. Russia had the Iranian Shahed 136 kamikaze drones, which inflicted massive damage on Ukraine. Then the Russians developed their own version, the Geran 2. But now the Ukrainians have made rapid gains in drone technology, giving them the ability to strike deep inside Russian territory. Kyiv has confirmed that it once again targeted the Russian frigate called the Admiral Essen. A drone hit the warship while it was in Russia's Novorossiysk naval base. It was the fourth strike on the vessel. Attacks on their vessels have forced the Russians to put up anti-drone netting across warships and submarines for all 4 of their fleets. Ukraine's drones now have the range to strike deep inside Russian territory, making all of Moscow's fleets viable targets. And Russia isn't just relying on nets to stop the Ukrainian drone menace. It has developed drone interceptors like the Yolka handheld system. It's a fire-and-forget kinetic drone interceptor, which allows Russian forces to launch an interceptor round and then quickly retreat to safety. It's a kinetic interceptor, which means it does not carry an explosive component. That allows it to be manufactured quickly and at low cost, and then transported safely. It is one of the innovations Russia has been forced to make to combat Ukraine's drone threat. Ukraine has been mass-producing cheap first-person view attack drones. They can cost as little as $10,000, like the Vampire Hexacopter series. This puts traditional military equipment at an economic disadvantage, seeing as it can be damaged or destroyed by something much cheaper. Which is why Russia is also rushing to produce cheap drone countermeasures. The Russia-Ukraine war seems to have entered a new phase, one where cheap, mass-produced drones can reshape the battlefield. And this is forcing nations to rethink the advantages of costly conventional weapon systems. Because a $10,000 drone may just poke a hole through a multi-million-dollar warship. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Joining us now for this conversation is Mr. Joachim Bitterlich. He's a former European diplomatic and security advisor to German Chancellor Helmut Kohl and former German ambassador to NATO. Mr. Bitterlich, it's good to see you and thank you very much for joining us. He is in Paris. I just want your assessment, your quick assessment on what is really happening in Ukraine, because both countries are now using drones in the battlefield. What are the ramifications and the impact of that?
Let's take the case of last night, simply. It seems that Ukraine has been sending a drone on a home of students near Luhansk, occupied by the Russians. And the Ukrainians say clearly, no, we have never taken a civil objective, we are only looking at military objectives. And the Russians say, no, but we will now introduce a counter on this attack against civilian targets. And this is just an example, because each side is using drones more and more. It's changing totally the war game and the battlefield, if you want. And both operate even beyond their borders. Last week we had this attack of a Russian drone in eastern Romania, against a civil house. And at the same time, we had an alert in the Baltic states because of Ukrainian drones overflowing the northwest of Russia, too near to St. Petersburg. And both sides are using what I call disinformation and information, propaganda, in order to underline they're right, and they can use even more and attack deeper and more forcefully.
Mr. Bitterlik, let me ask you about the civilian targets, because both countries have been denying the claims. It started with Russia saying that Ukraine is targeting, actually it's Ukraine which started the claims that Russia is targeting civilian infrastructure. And now Russia is blaming Ukraine of targeting civilian infrastructure in their country. What is this? What is really happening here between these two countries?
Please, it's on the one hand, it's disinformation, a certain degree. We should be careful to assess what the two sides tell us. On the other hand, it's raising to some extent what I call the risks of this war. Don't underestimate this, because the Russians are today on the side, let's say, they are no more advancing. They have real difficulties with the new Ukrainian warfare. They're more in the defensive and they lose territory even. And what people fear on the ground is that the Russians are looking for reasons in order to attack harder, and especially to attack, for example, Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. Even more than in...
Ambassador Bitterlik, I think we'll have to end this discussion here. Our time is over. Thank you very much for your insights and for talking to us today.
A pleasure as always. Goodbye.